Great. So I had an out-of-body experience 5 years ago. It happened at Cunurnet in Alcobaça in Portugal. And I got the chance to fly a drone with virtual reality. So the drone was flying, I was sitting in a tennis court, and I could see through the drone's eyes. And I flew over buildings, over trees, over hills. It was an exhilarating experience. Up until I flew over myself. And at that point in time, my blood froze. Not because I realized I was going bald. I knew that already. But because I did not identify with the guy that was sitting in the tennis court. In fact, I could have been smashed by a meteorite and I wouldn't have reacted. Well, okay. And when that happened, I had been working in telemanipulation, in robotics and virtual reality for 7 years. But it was that experience that drove home the great possibilities and at the same time the terrible possibilities that might be associated with this technology. Now, does the clicker work? It's next. Not working? Yeah? Might need another clicker then. Yeah, there you go. So you might be wondering what I'm wearing right now, and why am I wearing this? This is my mandarin hand. So my mandarin hand allows me to caress, it allows me to touch, it allows me to grab and squeeze objects, whether or not they are here, and whether or not they are real. So it's a human-machine interface that we developed in one of our laboratories for virtual reality, but also for telepresence. So in the short time we have together today, I would like to give you a flavor of haptic immersive telepresence. That means teleporting yourself somewhere else and being able to touch, to grab, and to act upon the world in another place. And the wonderful possibilities and the terrible possibilities that it brings about, if you dare to know. So the idea of telepresence is much, much older than the word of telepresence. And it's captivated the minds of incredible people like Isaac Asimov. So telepresence means being somewhere else. And also the minds of anyone who has had their in-laws over the holidays at home. Yeah, it might be touching a sensitive nerve there. So the interesting thing is that it doesn't take much to imagine the first human that thought of telepresence, probably a caveman looking at that eagle's nest up there and saying it would be wonderful to get up there, probably to make himself an omelette. But that's what's wonderful about the concept, is that it touches the very way that we experience the world, all our bodily functions, and that's why I want to talk to you about this today. So, what are the ingredients of what we call haptic immersive telepresence? First, you need a person and an avatar. And unless we're getting very kinky, which we could, the avatar should be a robot. The person is, as in this case, someone who wants to be somewhere else, possibly because their in-laws are behind them. And then what do we need to get this telepresence in place? Well, you need sensors. Sensors like the ones that I'm wearing today. Sensors that know what the person wants to do, how it wants to act, so that it can tell the avatar on the other side what they have to do. The avatar's actuators then become my muscles. But more importantly, the avatar is in a remote environment. And the avatar sensors, the robot sensors, become my eyes, become my ears, and become my skin. Because we need to be able to touch and to do things. All of this, of course, needs processing, more or less, and an awesome communications link. Otherwise, it won't work. And once you have that, the possibilities are just amazing. So for example, you can use the robot to catch your in-laws from behind. I'm trying to exercise my demons on stage here as well. The road towards this haptic immersive telepresence has been very long. I'm not going to talk about all the different things that have had to happen for us to consider it. Just know and this is an interesting thing, that telemanipulation has existed even before industrial robotics. It was created in the 1950s for the nuclear industry, because there are things that you simply don't want to touch yourself over there. And in their free time, scientists tried things like lighting a lady's cigarette remotely. It was a thing at the time. But even in my laboratory at CEA, 10 years before I was born, we were already doing haptic telemanipulation with mobile robots. So a robot with 2 arms that could go somewhere else, and the person could act for them. Not with these gloves, not at the time. So where are we today with this technology? You might have seen mobile telepresence robots. They are a thing. They have been for the last 10 years or so. And initially, they were tablets on a stick with wheels. Now, you've got more functionalities than that today, but in essence, you can still move around some other place today and annoy your office co-workers on the other side of the world. It's still not immersive, and by and large, with very, very few exceptions, you cannot touch anything. It's just like a video conference on wheels. But now step to the other side of the research mirror, and wonderful things are happening. What you see over here is one of the ancestors of Mandarin. There we still had 3 fingers, now we got 4. If budget allows, we'll get 5 fingers someday. But still, that allowed the researcher to control a hand that had 3 fingers, to squeeze, to grasp, and to manipulate, do fancy things with the 3 robot fingers. For example, on Scotch tape, and here you see them both together. I have had the chance to do this remotely from another building, and we have been able to touch and to tinker, for example, with electrical wiring from 1,000 kilometers away, and it still works. So, why are we not seeing more of this today? And you've got the laws of physics and the laws of the market, of course. I'd like to talk to you about 3 big challenges for this to become a reality for the huddled masses yearning to breathe free from their in-laws. The first one is the sensory experience that you can provide to the person. You might have seen this, it's called a homunculus. It's not meant to be anything obscene. It just represents a human from a sensory point of view, so how much does each part of your body occupy in your brain, in your cortex, in terms of sensing. And of course, the mouth is a big part, the hands are a big part, but they are things that you really want to tackle if you want to provide a good sensory experience. And today, you could say that the vision, we've got it covered with Zoom. Hearing, you got it covered. And sense of smell and taste, not so much. But you might be surprised that there are quite a few crazy people and not so crazy people that are actually working on that. So being able to provide you with taste and smell from somewhere else. I hope it'll work someday. I've had the chance to try a couple, and we're still getting there. But the big battle for the last few years, and even today, is being fought over the sense of touch. Mainly for the hands, but also for touching with other parts of your body. And the problem is that you can. There is no technical impossibility in providing richer and richer sensory experiences. For example, my Mandarin hand here, it can deform the flesh of my fingers when I lift up an apple from the table. I can feel the apple pulling on me. That's really realistic. The problem is that to do that, I need infinite screws, motors, gears, even little optical bits and drums on each fingertip. That's the problem. And so the devices that we're left with to provide this experience, they are still very expensive. The price is lowering. If you know about haptic gloves, the cost has come down by a factor of 2 in about a year. That's wonderful. They still cost more than my car. And I won't tell you how much this beauty costs us to make. And then you get to the final law, the laws of physics that you cannot get around. The interesting thing, if you want to touch something that is elsewhere, is that you need much, much better frame rates than for video. So it's not 90 frames per second as with a really nice fluid video. It's not 24 frames per second as with old TVs. We need at least 200 frames per second if you want to feel that you're really touching something well. And there you have Mr. Speed of Light. You cannot get a latency of less than 200 milliseconds to the other side of the world. And I've heard that Elon is going to make it better with satellite-to-satellite communication with the future Starlink constellations. But we're not there yet, and I'm sorry to say that we will not experience immersive haptic telepresence in Mars. You'll have to go there yourself with Elon. So how are these challenges being overcome? Because they are moving forward. And the beauty and the interesting thing, I'm going to say it with 3 films. Ready Player One, iRobot, and Avatar. Ready Player One, wonderful virtual reality opera. For me, it exemplifies the efforts that are being made everywhere today to resuscitate the metaverse, to make the elusive human-machine interfaces, glasses, and haptic interfaces, get up to a standard where everybody can use it. And that benefits us telepresence geeks directly. Anything we get on the human side. Second one is not Will Smith. I'm not saying that he's going to come and save the day. Jury is out regarding what the efforts by Tesla, by the Chinese, it seems like half the world is trying that these days, to make humanoid robots what they're going to come to. But whether we have fleets of humanoid robots or not, any efforts that they're making to bring the costs down, to move to softer parts, to cheaper limbs, they're going to benefit us in terms of avatars and what we can use to touch on the other side. Whether we make the robots intelligent enough to do complex tasks themselves or not. And the final one is Avatar. And now again, I'm not getting into the kinky possibility of controlling living beings, which is also in the film, but about the neural connection. So being able to connect directly with the nervous system. And that is also not science fiction anymore. Now, a few years ago, it was in 2019, this is also an effort we had at CEA, we made Thibaut, a tetraplegic patient, walk again. So use his legs and his arms. And he was doing that using brain implants that he was using to drive an avatar with. No, the avatar was an exoskeleton, and Thibaut just happened to be inside. But it worked. What is less well known about this is that Thibaut spent 1 week per month doing trials, hooking up to the exoskeleton. The other 3 weeks, he was in virtual reality, and he was using his implants to learn how to control the robot, to learn how to control this virtual avatar, which meant that when he came to Clinatech, he was ready for business. And the beautiful thing there is, well, here, this is a medical application. I won't be the first one to have a brain implant, but we'll see if that will come. But you've got BCI interfaces that you don't need, that are not invasive already coming up. The lines are getting blurred. The masters and the slaves, the robot that you control, the robot that you use to control, but also virtual and real. And that's where things can get a bit scary. So let's say scary, but scary good, we hope. I've been in very serious conversations, also regarding tetraplegic patients, about putting them to work again manually by wiring their brains directly to remote earth-moving machines. So plenty of questions regarding whether we should be doing that, but in terms of technical feasibility, we're not far at all. An even scarier thing is that we can, once we've got this, I can wire myself with any type of human-machine interface. I can control anything. It doesn't have to be a human. It could be a monster. It could be a giant octopus robot, if that's your thing. And what that does to you, and what that does to the human experience if you do this for extended periods of time, well, jury is out. I've got a horrible anecdote regarding that octopus thing. Ask me in the break. We don't have enough time to do that live. And then if you look at the nicer side of things, the technical possibility to exist at other scales is now there. So I'm here. I could have a huge avatar. I'm trying to get in touch with the Japanese that have made these giant Gundam robots, by the way, to see if we can control them. But you could also create very small robots. They won't probably look like a human. And actually get inside tiny spaces and experience being tiny. Now, you might think that this is just for fun, but imagine if your oral surgeon could operate in the same way that a worker is laying stucco inside a room. Precision task wouldn't have to be precision anymore, and there are new possibilities that open up. We're talking about that with surgeons, so it's not science fiction either. I would say that overall, there are more exciting possibilities than horrible possibilities. My 3 takeaway messages for you today would be, number 1, haptic immersive telepresence is actually within reach. And now it's expensive, but costs are coming down very fast. The possibility that it opens, even with what we have today, is amazing. But once we get neural interfaces the way that we need them, it's just going to be a completely different thing. And I cannot wait. All that we need to do is to tackle these possibilities with responsibility. Now, I'm a firm believer in using the digital tapestry that we have created in this world to make physical life better. The possibilities that I'm talking about today, I am not advocating that we become a species that doesn't interact directly anymore and is plugged onto these things all day long. It's just an extension. It's allowing us to experience things that we would not have been able to experience otherwise. But if I have a chance to be with real people, such as yourselves, like today, well, there's no place I'd rather be. Thank you very much.